And I'm Adriana Ahart.
And our project was pretty much on about the Human Genome Project and whether it was a worthwhile effort or if it pretty much was a big waste of time and money. So just some background information before we get into it. The Human Genome Project was started in 1988 and it was an international research project that involved 6 countries, which included France, Germany, the United States, the United Kingdom, China, and Japan. And so pretty much the entire goal of the Human Genome Project was to determine the sequence of human DNA base pairs. And once the sequence was found, the individual genes located within these base pairs were then mapped so scientists and researchers could know the location of these genes. So just some terms. Your genome is the complete set of DNA within an organism. To give you some numbers, humans have about 3 billion base pairs within their genome. And each of these base pairs contain hundreds to thousands of genes, just to give you an idea of how many genes these researchers had to map throughout the project. Sequencing is determining the exact order of base pairs within an organism, and this was, again, the entire goal of the project. And then gene therapy is the process of treating a disease without medication. And so instead what you're doing is switching out old genes or defunct genes with new working ones, or you're either turning on or off a gene or inserting new genes into a genome.
Okay, so the first thing we have to talk about is diagnostics. Diagnostics in the Human Genome Project is really important. According to the National Library of Medicine, genetic screening is the studying of individuals to map the genomes. It may be considered unethical because they are not supposed to harm individuals during this. However, they brought in children with Fragile X syndrome and they were given tasks. Fragile X syndrome is a disease on the X chromosome that affects, gives them learning disabilities and maybe a mental handicap. The parents of the children with Fragile X, they were upset because the children didn't understand what they were being asked to do.
Okay, so while most of the subjects that actually entered into the Human Genome Project and volunteered for the research, many of them were already showing symptoms of the disease, or they already knew that they carried traits for a disease. So they went into this project hoping that they could get help or advice on what kind of treatment they could be using for their disease. And while some of the subjects didn't know that they were showing symptoms or they didn't even know that they carried a disease, they were diagnosed with cancer or some sort of neurological disease. And this just allowed them to be more proactive in their treatment. So while it was shocking, it gave them early recognition of a disease they may have been carrying.
Okay, so the next thing we have to talk about is eugenics. According to Carol and Capita, eugenics is controlling of traits. This can be considered unethical because you're playing God. And in playing God, you can change the appearance of a person, blonde hair or super tall, and that can make some traits undesirable to the generation.
Okay, so as it is with any scientific experiment, there's always going to be a question of ethics. People are always going to have their personal opinions on what you can and cannot do to the human body or to animals or any kind of organism. But, I mean, there's still third world countries that feel like if you get cancer, that's pretty much the fate you were dealt with. There's nothing you can do for it, you know, you just have to live with that disease. But for the U.S. National Library of Medicine, gene therapy is actually extremely beneficial because instead of blasting an entire group of genes with radiation to try and eradicate a disease, they can now just focus on a single gene, which helps you to receive treatment better and faster.
Okay, so the next important thing in the Human Genome Project is genetic mutation. This can harm individuals, the changing of traits, if we evolve out of them and something comes up in the future and we need these genes and we don't have them.
So again, with genetic mutation, that can be a thing of ethics and personal opinion, but according to genome.gov, more often than not, this genetic mutation is more helpful than harmful. Again, when genetic mutation first came about, scientists were just blasting radiation at a group of genes. They weren't really focusing on a single location. But now that they've been able to map out these individual locations of the genes, they can focus on a single spot and localize the treatment instead of just blasting an entire section of your genes and possibly causing further harm. So again, nowadays, in modern times, the benefits definitely outweigh the risks.
Okay, so another important idea of the Human Genome Project is privacy. In the Human Genome Project, they would give information about cases to big companies, like pharmaceutical companies.
So this was actually a concern of